I'm Tyler White, and I've spent the majority of my life working in the outdoors as a soldier, outdoorsman, and guide. Many years ago, I came to a crossroad in my military career. I felt like I was at the point where I was no longer able to learn about survival from the military. So I searched and I watched as many new shows popped up like Dual Survival, Survivor Man, and others. Shows that partnered seasoned soldiers with primitive living instructors. I watched experienced soldiers who had amazing skills with tools fall short without them, and I had to look deep within myself and ask why. So, realizing that something was missing in my training, I then formulated a plan. I set out to find people with these skills in my area, to find out who they were, where they come from, who taught them, and more importantly, how could I learn and master these skills for myself. This journey has led me to a place where I have had the privilege of teaching these things that I love to others, skills that now range from advanced navigation to primitive fire. This is my journey to primitive. This is my story, yet it is a story that has never really been about me. One of the original founders, and arguably one of the main reasons that all of this stuff exists, is Larry Dean Olsen. This is Larry Olsen's story.
I'm Cheryl Olsen, wife of Larry Dean Olsen, and I met him a very long time ago when we were both young. Before I met him, I think the only wilderness skill I had learned was how to build a campfire with paper and matches and all that stuff. But in 7th grade, when I moved to Jerome, Idaho, and started going to church with some of my friends at a church that I'd never been to before. It happened to be his church. And we did see each other there and started to become acquainted a little bit. By the time I got to 9th grade, we decided to get to know each other better and we started dating. And that was when I began my learning about primitive outdoor survival skills. And I've been living that way ever since. It's almost like I married a caveman. In fact, I often thought he should have been born back in those times because it was just a part of his nature to want to be out there and live the way they had lived. Our dates were mostly going out to the desert, hunting arrowheads, climbing cliffs, looking through caves to find artifacts and things, and just in general really thriving in the out-of-doors together. When we decided to get married and started talking about family and things, we knew that they were going to be involved with that same kind of lifestyle with us. So 4 days after my 18th birthday, 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, we were married, and our honeymoon was on a week-long outdoor survival trip. We built a little teepee, a wiki up with branches and bushes and things, and it just has gone from there. We started having children. We took him to the wilderness with us, and they started learning how to do the things, and they're still doing it.
Hi, I'm Farrah Hossman, and I'm the oldest daughter of Larry Olsen. And growing up with him as my dad was a very unique and exciting experience. And it didn't take long before I realized that I was doing and learning things that most children did not have the opportunity to do. My earliest recollections are of going with my father and my mother and siblings into the wilderness for long periods of time while he ran survival courses, and we played around and tried to do all the things that the students did. We learned how to build fires without matches, how to catch fish without a fishing pole, how to use a knife and carve our utensils to eat with, and build traps and all kinds of things, shelters. And when I would talk about these things with my friends at school, they seemed to not even know what I was talking about. And if I was with another family and they would tell their children to stop playing in the fire, I would think, why? we need fire. It's important. You got to use it. You know, that was just a foreign idea to me that you shouldn't, you know, play in the fire. Anyway, we learned lots of things as young children, and some of the things I remember most are the times when my dad would have us figure out what to do in a situation. And I think that is one of the most profound things I learned from all of it. Besides just the skills, he taught us that when you're in a situation that you don't know what to do, you look around and you figure out what's there and what you can use and do something with it. I remember a time when my two little sisters and I were climbing down into a pothole, and it was basically a cliff in the rock, and we got stuck and we couldn't go up or down, and our fingers were slipping, our footholds were slipping, and we were, you know, calling out, help, help. And my dad came along, and he got a couple of my siblings, and instead of getting a rope or getting down underneath us and lifting us up and getting us out of the situation, he had one of my siblings lie down, and he held onto his feet, and then that one reached down, and he taught us how to clasp hands and pull each other up, and that's how we got out of that. I remember going fishing in the creek. He taught us how to lie down in the ditches that were rushing down because the creek was very shallow. And my sister would hold the back of my t-shirt nice and tight around my neck, while I would lay with my head downstream and open up the bottom of my shirt. And as the fish were coming down, you know, these ditches, they would go right into the shirt, and then we would, you know, clamp it shut and run over to the bank while the fish were squiggling in our back and dump them out on the ground. And so he taught us all kinds of different ways to do things, but the main thing was the attitude that you can take care of yourself, to have confidence, to not panic, and to figure out something to do. And that was a valuable lesson that has benefited my life in every aspect, whether out in the wilderness or in the city or wherever.
My name is Jane Olsen. I am the second born of the Olsen tribe. There are 10 siblings, born of Larry and Cheryl Olsen. Being number 2, I started this wilderness trekking before I can even remember. So when I try to think of when I learned any particular survival skill, I think I just downloaded it. It was all around me. I watched it. So all of those things have always just come natural to me. Other children that I went to school with after long treks for the summers had no idea what we were living like out there. And I remember, I'm not sure which friend it was, but one summer I was allowed to bring a friend. The parents got together and allowed one of my friends to come out and live with us for a couple of weeks. And I remember my mom telling the story that she could hear me talking to my little friend outside of the teepee. And I told my little friend, out here, it doesn't matter if your clothes match. What matters is if you have clothes. And those are the kind of things that I wondered about other children. They didn't get things like that. Things were so important about the striped direction of your shirt versus your pants and things. And when I come back into the city, I was perplexed of how important, really unimportant things were to other people.
I learned skills at a very early age because of my intense interest of things that were on the ground. My first recollection of it is when I was about 4 years old. I found some Indian beads in the dirt in the flower garden next to our front steps of our home in Rupert, Idaho. I showed them to my mother, and she said, yes, these are Indian beads. And from that point on, I was always had my nose on the ground looking for treasure. I didn't connect it too much with Indians at that time, but it was important to me to find things. And I had little collections of all kinds of doodads that I'd find off the ground. But when I became really interested in the skills of survival, and was when I found an arrowhead. That happened when I was in the 6th grade. I was digging ditch for my uncle on his farm near Jerome, Idaho, and I threw a shovel full of dirt up on the bank, digging ditch, and I saw a shiny object on the end of the shovel blade. it went sailing over into the pile. I crawled up there, sorted through all the dirt until I found what it was, and it was a beautiful arrowhead made of black obsidian. That's when I really got taken by, who made this? What was it? How do you do this? And what was it for? And I took that arrowhead to school, showed it to my teacher, and she made me stand up in front of the class and tell about it, which I didn't like. When I left the classroom that day to go home, she handed me a book called The White Indian Boy. And said, you might want to read this. It's about some of the Indians that made this arrowhead. That caught me. Up until that time in the 6th grade, I was almost a non-reader. But I took it home. That night I plowed through the first sentence or two, which was just telling the beginning of the book. But somehow it caught my interest, and I pressed on until I had read the whole book, and I could read anything after that. I taught myself to read in one night, and after that I could read anything. In fact, within a few weeks I had acquired a book called Basin Plateau Aboriginal Socio-Political Groups by Stewart, which was an anthropology journal on the Paiute Indians. So I spent a lot of time learning by reading that book and learning how to fiddle around with obsidian. I'd find some little obsidian chips and I'd try to work with them. I didn't know what to do. Then my uncle one day said that he'd been over to Glass Buttes, Oregon, and had met a fellow that knew how to make those arrowheads, and he had showed him how. So my uncle taught me how to do it, my Uncle Bill. From that point on, it was Stone Age all the way for me. I forgot about this was a jet age. I forgot all about those kinds of things, and I just plunged into the Stone Age, and that's where I wanted to be. I learned how to make things by observation, by just reinventing actually some of those things, and it consumed me. I would go out and try to live that way. Cook on a campfire, learned how to start a fire without matches, and all of that just fell into place for me. So that was my focus in life. At school they called me Chiefio, or Chief. And I was kind of proud of that, even though they thought it was just a derision. But over the years, it came to the point where I was being asked to come and teach. They said, where do you get all these arrowheads? I'd found quite a few by then. And they would ask me to come and tell about them, church groups and that kind of thing. And it became quite popular. When I got away to college, I spent a lot of time out in the desert in my spare time. That was my recreation rather than sports or anything like that. And I got noticed then too. And I finally decided if I was gonna make a little money, I needed to do it. We were living in a housing that cost us $50 a month. I was working at Desert Towers Cafeteria at BYU, and it just was about break even with not too much food to eat. And so I needed the money, and I started a little course, got a scout group to pay me $25 to teach them how to chip arrowheads and make arrows and bows. And I did that, and that started my career. I went to BYU special courses and conferences with the youth leadership department backing it. And we started a non-credit course at BYU in survival skills. And that really pressed me to master better everything I knew. And I started that class. They needed 30 students in there for it to go. By 6, 7 o'clock when it was supposed to start, there were only about 15 kids there. And then more people came in. Pretty soon some professors came in. And by the time it was 7:30, there were 70-some students, 72 students, I believe, in the class. Maybe it was 76, I don't remember. But that started my career. They paid me double my wages, split it into 2 groups, and I was on my way. From that point on, they told me more courses that actually gave credit in the department than anybody in the history of that department. And there were some powerful guys there making curriculum. for troubled youth and helping with the Boy Scout program, that kind of thing. I was able to hire my own people to work with me because I needed help in the wilderness portions of those. And I'd been there a couple of years doing this. I had a pretty good staff of around 15 people. And they were earning money to go through school. Most of them were former students of mine. And then the national press got a hold of it during those times when kids were on drugs a lot and everything. We were having a success rate that was better than anything in the nation. And a lot of interest, a lot of trouble because of that interest, a lot of naysayers, that kind of thing. You don't take kids and drag them around in the desert and half kill them. And they didn't understand that it wasn't like that at all. We went out there to live off the land and become Paiutes. We went out there to overcome the addictions that were there among the kids by giving them hard hikes that not because we were driving them, not because it was a boot camp, which it wasn't, but because we loved those kids and we wanted to get to the next water hole so they could dig up some water. And it was just a positive thing all the way. Did have a lot of criticism for a while, but we overcame all of that. And this program became very popular throughout the entire United States. There's a lot of colleges, a lot of private schools that now use the program. It took a lot more people than myself to make this all happen. I didn't invent all the skills. I didn't master all the skills. Dave Holladay could walk circles around me with respect to the skills. But they took their cue from me in the beginning. And I don't know how they would have done that, or it probably would have come along some way, but somehow everybody glommed onto me and I become the world expert on it. That's the way the TV looked at it anyway. But I never felt that way. I knew that there were people that were just as good or better, and I gathered them about me as best I could, and they helped me through a lot of things, and they counseled me in many ways in working with youth, and they taught me the skills that they were learning over and above what I could do. And it was just a wonderful existence. I had some of the greatest friends in the world. Zeke Sanchez came in early. We had a program called Youth Leadership 480, which was helping troubled youth to get back into school at BYU. They had a policy that if you flunked out, you had to wait 2 years before you could reapply, or you need to go on a mission and come back and apply, or go in the military for 2 years and then come back and apply. They wanted to shorten that 2-year time period, so they asked me to take them out for half a semester and put them through this experience that I'd been working with. And if that got them back in, and then they would re-enroll them into BYU immediately the next semester, see how they did. That was widely accepted and very successful. And it would be to this day, except I don't think they're doing it there now since I left. The concept behind that was the person who helped build that concept with me was Zeke Sanchez. He was one of those flunk out students from BYU, and he came along and as a student, I had a missing staff member that couldn't hack the trail, had to go home, and I needed somebody to take care of the girls group, and I asked him to do it, and he said no. He was just there to get his credits and get back into school. Next day I asked him again, and he'd had time to think it over, and he thought, you know, that'd be an easy A for me if I did that for Larry. And so he said he would do it. And we've been together since 1966 as partners. And it's been a wonderful existence with him. He's a very brilliant man, a very soulful person, and a very spiritual man. He's helped develop the curriculum all the way through. Then as other people came through the program, and I'd find one or two in almost every group that I could hire, and then train them, and they could do just as good as anyone else. There's a list of several hundred, which I couldn't even begin to quote here. Some of the notables that have gone ahead and done things is Dave Westcott, for one, who took over the rabbit stick rendezvous from me. after I didn't have time to run it anymore. And he's turned it into an international annual event that is very successful. They had over 600 and some students there this past year. And then he started the winter count, so that we'd have an additional one for the winter time. It's been wildly successful. Another individual I'd like to mention is Dave Holladay. He came in as a high school student, interested in the program, and then by the time he became his freshman at BYU, I believe, he can correct that if it's wrong. He very quickly let me know that he was vitally interested in it as a profession. And he developed some of the skills to their best use. He could hammer out a stone axe faster than anybody else, you could imagine. And he'd sit there and sing and tap that stone on the axe head all day long. Drive the rest of us nuts. But he was, the thing that impressed me about this young man is that he was the finest teacher I think I've ever met. He had a way of presenting an idea, a way of presenting a skill that just captured anybody's attention that was there. Nobody walked away from him when he was talking.
Well, so after all of these years, many of the siblings have run programs. We've all been working in wilderness survival off and on. Dad has now retired. We have 38 grandchildren as of now between Larry and Cheryl. So 2 years ago, we decided that we needed to keep the tradition going. Many of the young ones growing up hadn't been exposed to the skills. They'd heard about it, but we decided to have a Olsen Tribe Wilderness Survival Family Reunion. And we gathered out in the wilderness and had the most beautiful camp setting with skills. All of the children were learning how to build fires, use knives. It was a wonderful experience. And this week, actually, we're having our second Olsen Tribe reunion nearby. And one of the things that Dad has planned to do with each one of his grandchildren is to present them with a token, just in memory of him, with symbology that is important to the core principles of everything that he's done with his life. So I'm going to give this to Dad. This is the knife that I have. A man named Richie Bello that we met at winter camp had these knives, and we were so impressed with those that we've ordered many, many of them, one for each of the children. So here you go, Dad.
Okay. When I first saw these hanging on a branch at winter count, I took one look at them and I said, this is it. I want these for my kids because there's a story that I can tell them that if they remember it, it will affect their lives for good. So this is a whistle knife. It has a stone blade, sharp on both edges, and it's very strong. And it represents something that is not typical with the idea of using a knife, but it has to do with wisdom, has to do with choice. And so what this blade represents then to you is the cutting to the center of the truth. If there is a question, an item, whatever it is in your life that you need to know, you can learn the truth of whatever you're thinking about by cutting to the center. Then you have a choice to make. Are you going to live by it or not? That's always going to be your choice. No one can take away your choice, not Heavenly Father, not jailers. You can be in prison and still be free to choose. And so I want this blade to represent that to you, that you always cut through to the truth. Make sure you find the truth and then use it in your life. The bone is the knuckle bone of the deer, and the deer is a lovely animal. It's a giving animal. You know, can you think of ways that a deer gives?
They provide food for even back to the ancient ones. They've given their lives for nourishment and sustenance.
Yes, okay. What else?
Antlers to chip out arrowheads.
There you go. See? You could go on and on about the benefits of a deer. They're also very fast and they move swiftly into their lives. Okay. So this bone represents moving forward swiftly and with grace and beauty. And as long as you remember that, you can help. It'll help guide you to this cutting to the center. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now there's another little feature that's going to help this speed along. See this little groove right along the top?
Mm-hmm.
That's the swift foot of the deer as it travels. And it's graceful and beautiful in its travel. But there needs a little help once in a while. And that help is to encourage the speed of getting the information over to the blade to do its work well, to really cut through to the center.
One of the fond memories I have about being out on the trail with my father is that anytime we would find an arrowhead or an item that might be something, it's the big something, this could be something, this could be something, we would run to Dad. And his enthusiasm to look and examine anything that we brought to his feet was so validating. It was really exciting to have something that Dad might really appreciate. It built our confidence, and it also built our passion to have the same interest as him. And one day I was walking down a trail and I noticed something kind of sticking up out of the grass, and I picked it up, and it was actually the tip of a broken arrow with some sinew wrapped around it and an arrowhead still attached. And boy, was I excited. I ran and ran all the way back to camp to show my dad. And he looked at that and he said, "What? What?" And he looked at it some more and he goes, "Oh, this is from one of our students over the years. This is from us." So it wasn't ancient, but it was really exciting. I just really learned those things, the passion for those things from my father. And even with all of the grandchildren now, all of those grandchildren, all 38 of them, eagerly bring everything to Grandpa that they find, any rock, stone, pebble. And he always enthusiastically stops what he's doing and examines that with them and explains and teaches to them what it is. It's a really fond memory. So now with these family gatherings, we are Larry is passing the torch down. He's giving the torch to his children to carry this work, to carry these skills through to the future generations. There's so much love there. There's so much about living in the simplicity of the wilderness that brings a core connection between us, and it's really special. I'm really thankful to be a part of Larry and Cheryl's life.
I have a picture of this young lady and her older sister bringing rocks to me to identify. They had picked up so many of them and filled their pockets so full, and then they loaded their arms full and were walking along, and both their pants fell down at the same time. Rocks weighed them down, pinned them around their ankles. They had their arms loaded, they couldn't move, and they're just screaming and yelling for help. We took a picture of that before we helped them. Pretty cool.
I'm Elizabeth Olsen, and I first met Larry in 1993 when I was hired by Anasazi. When I first met Larry, it was out in the desert, and he was sitting on the bumper of a car, and I was asked to go over and introduce myself to him. So I had no idea who he was, and I just said, "Hi, I'm Elizabeth. How are you doing?" And he said, "Good." And he said, "Would you like to learn how to make a hafted knife?" And I was like, "Sure." So he got a rock and busted it with another rock, and we went and took that sharp edge and went and cut a branch off of off of some a tree, and then we proceeded to make a hafted knife out of it, and we wrapped twine around it. And I was enamored. He was probably one of the best teachers I've ever come across, just because you could tell that he had a passion for what he was doing. And so later I found out that as we were meeting that he was the founder of Anasazi, so I was a little bit overwhelmed just because he's, pretty cool. And anyway, he had me describe how to make a hafted knife to everyone my first day on the job. So at that point, he inspired in me, just that was my first knowledge and teaching I'd ever had with survival skills. And so it continued to help me to want to learn more. And so as I learned more, I just was fascinated with the whole concept of everything. And I ended up meeting his son and marrying him. So that's how I came to be here. In the beginning, it started off with a simple passion of a little boy who had lots of dreams to go and be like the Indians, and he had a lot of questions about who was on the earth anciently, and he tried to play that way and play as young children, I think, would anciently. And from his passions and his questions that he had, he was able to study and learn and have a passion for survival and working hard too, and learning from, I guess, nature, learning from animals, learning from his trial and error of figuring out what the Indians are doing. His passion, Larry's passion, led to other people catching that and also having a curiosity for that, which led to taking expeditions out into the wilderness, and then it kind of caught wildfire from there, and people understood that when you get down to the basics is when you can truly learn to grow. So I believe that Larry taking it from the beginning into a passion, it just grew and grew into what a nationwide phenomena, and I think that it will continue to grow as people find out more. I talk to people about his book, and people have either had it for a really long time or they're excited to have it because it's just so unique. And I talk to people about his book, Outdoor Survival Skills, because it's a great birthday gift. And see if they haven't. Either they've had it and their grandpa read it and their kids read it, or they haven't heard of it but they're very excited about it. So it's a lot of information that you can't find very many places. And it creates a passion for a lot of things. And I think that that's carried on.